Bonjour, this is Natalie speaking. Welcome to FrancoFoods. Today, we are in my birth province of Quebec. The reason we're going into Quebec right now is because it's March, and March is when the sap is flowing. I really like maple syrup. I really also enjoy going to a cabane à sucre in Quebec at this time of year. So since I can't go this year, I thought I would bring the cabane à sucre to New Hampshire. So today it's a maple syrup extravaganza at the Hurdy household. On the menu is ham cooked in maple syrup, roasted potatoes, roasted in maple syrup that is. The dessert that I'm making is des grappa. It's basically dumplings that are cooked in, you guessed it, maple syrup. We're going to start off by prepping the ham. I have a spiral cut ham, so I don't need to trim the fat. Once your ham is ready, you want to move on to preparing the glaze, what you're going to cook your ham in. For the ham and the glaze, it's kind of what my mom used to do, plus I put my own spin on things, so there's no real recipe. That said, I will put in the description below approximately what I used, but I can tell you that there is maple syrup and chicken stock. There's a beer, also just for an extra little zing, some mustard. The beer, I put a stout in. You probably could omit it. It's one of those homegrown recipes, I guess you could call it. Obviously, the one thing that is non-negotiable in this menu is the maple syrup. It has to be pure maple syrup. It can't be, as we call in French, sirop de poteau, which is basically maple syrup comes from a tree. Sirop de poteau comes from a telephone pole. So you put it all in the pot. I just kind of bring everything to a nice rolling boil. I want the sauce to thicken. I don't want it to be super runny. That's when you want to add the ham to the liquid. And as you can see, it's already starting to kind of separate, and I don't want that. So I've decided to add a skewer. Once the skewer is in place, I'm going to baste the ham. I want to make sure that there's a nice glaze on top, because I want that to caramelize as it cooks. Now I'm going to put it in the oven. Okay, so as the ham is cooking, I am going to start with the potatoes, chop them up. I'm using like smallish potatoes and cutting them in quarters. So you want them to be approximately the same size so that they'll cook evenly. So how did we even start with maple syrup? It's the Native Americans. They were already doing this a long time before we hit the shores. And they taught the settlers how to tap the trees. And it became entwined, at least in Quebec, very much into society, which is probably why it is still very much celebrated. Now I'm using a big skillet. To make these potatoes, you need something that can go in the oven. I've just warmed up some olive oil and garlic, and now I'm putting my potatoes in, and I'm just going to brown the potatoes and going to kind of toss them around a bit because I'm trying to get the flesh of the potatoes nice and golden. And then when that's done, we are adding the maple syrup. I toss it around because I want to get a little bit of maple syrup all over, and now it's into the oven. Today's vocab words are all about the maple syrup experience. L'érable, entailler, la sève, le sceau, le chalumeau. So I'm making the grappa. Grappa are dumplings that are cooked in maple syrup. I know that a lot of people, when they think about desserts in Quebec, they think about tarte au sucre or pudding chômeur, but I thought grappa would be a fun thing to try. I'll be honest, it's my first time making them, so I'm hoping they turn out okay. To start, you've got flour, then there's sugar, baking powder, salt. Once your dry ingredients are mixed nicely, add room temperature butter. I like to cut it into small pieces because I find it makes it easier to incorporate, and milk. I slowly add the milk and mix it in until it forms a fairly thick paste. And when the dough is ready, then I'm going to boil this in maple syrup, but it's not straight maple syrup. It would be too thick, so I'm going to add water back in. So here's an interesting fact. You need approximately 40 liters of maple sap, maple water, to make 1 liter of maple syrup. I'm going to let the maple mixture become all nice and simmery. When you can see the steam rising, and if you look on the edge, you can see the little bubbles that's the simmering started, I'm going to start putting in the dough into the syrup. I have a cookie scoop, but it's not working all that well, so I think I'm just going to go to the old-fashioned using 2 soup spoons to plump it in. As I said, this is my first time making these. Not feeling very confident, I won't lie. I mean, it's dough and maple syrup, so how bad can it be, right? So I'm going to just put all the balls of dough into the maple water mixture. I'm trying not to crowd them, but I think the reality is with the size of pot I have and the amount of dough I have, it's going to get crowded. The dough's all in. It is crowded. Hopefully it won't be just one gigantic mass. Hopefully it'll look the way it's supposed to look. Here we go. Time to put the lid on and you let it simmer for 15 minutes. I can't find my lid anywhere, so mother necessity, I'm going to use whatever I happen to have on hand, which is the lid of something else. So now the ham is ready and I'm going to take it out of the pot, of course, and let it sit. I'm going to use a sieve lined with cheesecloth and I'm going to put that in a pot because I'm going to transfer everything into the saucepan. I boil to evaporate the extra liquid just to make it thicker to pour on top of my meal. And now I've been boiling the juices for a little while. I'm reducing the juices to about half to where they were before. And that's going to be my sauce. Okay, the grappa are ready. They've been simmering for 15 minutes. Let's see what they look like. I know it looks weird, but that is what they're supposed to look like. So I'm pretty happy about that. Oh yeah, that's a grappa. Okay, so I'm going to take it off, leave that aside, keep it warm. So I'm getting ready to plate everything. I'm going to start by taking out the skewer. And as you see, look, it did a really nice job. The top is nicely glazed and caramelized and everything stayed in place. Okay, time to go on a serving platter. When you go to a SugarShack in Quebec, this menu, all of that is served with maple syrup family style, and you eat as much as you want until you're done. Suffice it to say, it's a lot of sugar. So what do you do to work it off? Well, you go dancing, of course, and it's just a good time. So yeah, it's a lot of food, but we also do work at least a part of it off. Now my potatoes are ready. I'm going to put them on my platter. And just for good measure, let's add a little bit more maple sauce to the ham on the platter before it's time to eat. Okay, table's ready. Carpar are ready to be served. So it's still nice and warm. They actually look really good. I'm very, very pleased with the way they turned out. It is what you would find at a cabane sucre when you're eating Carpar. Now in the description, I have put some links, some in French, some in English, on the history of maple industry in Quebec, and there's a couple of other links. But when I think about maple syrup and I think about a SugarShack or cabane sucre, I have fond memories of, yes, of course, eating great food, but dancing, singing, being with family. It's a very personal history, I guess you would say. I remember my mom making me taffy on snow. I've made taffy on snow for my kids, and it's one of those things that there are certain things that it's great to pass on from one generation to the next. The traditions surrounding the cabane sucre is one of those traditions for me. So I hope you've enjoyed this visit in Quebec, this little sneak peek into a tradition that spans generations. I'm hoping that you find some recipes that you enjoy. The potatoes and the grappa, I did follow recipes, so those are linked in the description. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed yourself and that you learned a couple of things. As always, merci et à la prochaine.